Imagine looking up at the night sky. For thousands of years, people believed that the earth was the center of the universe. They believed the sun, the moon, and all the stars moved around us. Everyone thought this was the absolute truth. The wisest teachers taught it. The most powerful leaders enforced it. If you disagreed, you could lose your job, go to prison, or even lose your life. But a few brave men decided to look closer. They used new tools. They asked dangerous questions. They wanted to know the real truth. This is the story of how a few bold thinkers challenged old beliefs and changed the human view of nature forever. Long ago, in Europe, people trusted ancient books. They read the books of ancient Greek thinkers like Aristotle and Ptolemy. These Greek thinkers said the earth stood completely still. They said the earth was the center of everything. This is called the geocentric model. Geocentric means the earth is at the center, and it does not move. For more than 1,000 years, nobody questioned this idea. It was comfortable. It made humans feel very important. During this time, the Catholic Church was very powerful in Europe. The Church liked the geocentric model. It fit perfectly with their religious teachings. They taught that God put humans right in the center of the universe. Because the church was so powerful, questioning this idea was very dangerous. It was considered heresy. People who spoke heresy were punished severely. Because of fear, science stood still for many centuries. In the early 1500s, a quiet man lived in Poland. His name was Nicholas Copernicus. Copernicus was a priest, a doctor, and a mathematician. He loved to look at the sky. He spent many cold nights on the roof of his house. He watched the planets move. He wrote down numbers. But soon he noticed a big problem. The math did not make sense. If the earth was in the center, the planets should move in simple circles. But in the sky, they seem to move backward sometimes. Copernicus had a bold new idea. He decided to change the center. What if the sun was in the middle? What if the earth was just another planet moving around the sun? This is called the heliocentric theory. Heliocentric means the sun is at the center, not the earth. Suddenly, Copernicus saw that the math worked perfectly. The puzzle was solved. But Copernicus was terrified. He knew the church would call this heresy. He knew he could be killed. Because he was afraid, Copernicus kept his ideas a secret. He wrote a book, but he hid it for many years. He only showed it to his closest friends. Finally, when he was very old and sick, he allowed his book to be printed. The story says that he held the first printed copy of his book on the very day he died in 1543. By dying, he escaped the anger of the church. His book quietly traveled across Europe. A small seed of truth was planted. Years passed. In Denmark, a rich nobleman named Tycho Brahe built a giant observatory. An observatory is a special building used for looking at the stars and planets. Tycho was a strange man. He lost part of his nose in a sword fight, so he wore a fake nose made of gold. But Tycho was very serious about the stars. Every night he looked at the sky and measured where the stars were. This is called observation. Tycho made the most accurate observations in history, but he did not have a telescope. He only used his eyes and giant metal tools. Tycho Brahe collected rooms full of data. Data means a large collection of facts and numbers. But Tycho was not very good at math. He needed help. He hired a young, brilliant mathematician named Johannes Kepler. Kepler was a poor man, but he had a beautiful mind. When Tycho died, Kepler took all the data. He studied the numbers for years. Kepler discovered that planets do not move in perfect circles. They move in ovals, like the shape of an egg. This path is called an orbit. An orbit is the shape a planet makes when it goes around the sun. Kepler proved that Copernicus was right. The Earth was moving. Far away in Italy, a new thinker entered the battle of ideas. His name was Galileo Galilei. Galileo was a brilliant teacher. One day he heard about a new invention from Holland. It was a simple tube with pieces of glass inside. It made faraway things look very close. Galileo built his own version. He made it much stronger. He called it a telescope. A telescope is a tool that uses curved glass lenses to make distant objects look large and clear. Most people use the early telescope to look at ships on the ocean. But Galileo did something completely different. He pointed it up at the sky. Through his telescope, Galileo saw things no human had ever seen before. First, he looked at the moon. The old book said the moon was a perfectly smooth ball. But Galileo saw mountains and deep holes. These holes are called craters. A crater is a large, bowl-shaped hole in the ground caused by an explosion or impact. Then he looked at the planet Jupiter. He saw 4 small stars moving around it. He realized they were moons. If Jupiter had its own moons, then the Earth was not the center of everything. Galileo finally had physical proof. Copernicus was right. Galileo was very excited. He wanted the world to know the real truth. He wrote a book about his incredible discoveries. He wrote it in Italian, the language of the common people, instead of Latin. He wanted every person to read it. The book was very popular. People loved it. But the powerful leaders of the church read it too. They were furious. To them, Galileo's book was an act of war against their authority. They believed he was attacking the Holy Scriptures. The church leaders arrested Galileo. He was an old man now. They brought him before the Inquisition. The Inquisition was a powerful and terrifying religious court. This court punished people who disagreed with the church. They showed Galileo their tools of torture. They told him he must take back his words. He had to say the earth did not move. Galileo was terrified. To save his life, he agreed. He got on his knees and said his discoveries were wrong. The church did not kill Galileo, but they punished him severely. They locked him in his house for the rest of his life. This is called house arrest. House arrest means a person is legally forced to stay inside their own home like a prisoner. Galileo went blind in his final years. He died feeling defeated and alone. But the church could not stop his ideas. His books were smuggled out of Italy. Smuggled means to move something secretly and illegally. His ideas traveled safely across Europe. The war for truth was just beginning. While Galileo was under house arrest, other thinkers joined the fight. In England, a man named Francis Bacon said people must stop blindly trusting old books. He said we must test things ourselves. We must do experiments. An experiment is a practical test done to see if a scientific idea is true. In France, a thinker named René Descartes said we should doubt everything until it is proven. Together, their ideas help create the scientific method. The scientific method is a clear, step-by-step process used to ask questions, test ideas, and find real facts. The scientific revolution needed a final hero to connect all the pieces. In 1665, a terrible sickness swept through England. It was called the plague. A young university student had to go back to his quiet farm to stay safe. His name was Isaac Newton. For a whole year, Newton worked completely alone in his farmhouse. These were his garage days. He experimented with light, math, and motion. One afternoon, he sat in his garden and watched an apple fall from a tree. He asked a simple but brilliant question. Why do things always fall down, but the moon stays up in the sky? Sitting in his quiet garden, Isaac Newton finally found the answer. He realized that the apple fell to the ground because the earth pulled it. He realized the earth also pulled the moon. He called this invisible force gravity. Gravity is a natural force that pulls objects toward each other. The bigger the object, the stronger the pull. The sun is massive, so its gravity keeps all the planets in their orbits. Suddenly, the whole universe made sense. The rules on Earth were the exact same rules in the sky. In 1687, Newton published a massive book. In this book, he used math to explain how everything in the universe moves. He proved that the universe was not chaotic or controlled by unpredictable magic. Instead, he showed that the universe was like a giant, beautiful clock. If you understood the gears and the rules, you could understand the clock. Newton's rules are called the laws of physics. Laws of physics are strict natural rules that explain how energy and matter behave in our universe. Newton's book was the ultimate victory. The long war against the old broken ideas was finally won. The ancient Greek books were finally put away. The earth was officially just a small rock floating in a massive, beautiful system. The bold thinkers, the scientists, became the new leaders of human discovery. They had fought against powerful kings and terrifying religious courts. And they had won. Because of men like Copernicus, Galileo, and Newton, the world changed forever. Society entered a new era. People stopped living in fear of superstitions. A superstition is a belief in magic or bad luck without any logical proof. Instead of believing in superstitions, people began to use reason. Reason is the human ability to think clearly, look at facts, and make smart judgments. This new way of thinking brought light to a dark world. The scientific revolution was the spark that started the modern world. Because these brave men dared to experiment, science grew quickly. In the years that followed, humans used the scientific method to discover medicine. They used it to build steam engines, generate electricity, and fly airplanes. Hundreds of years later, scientists used Newton's exact math to send rockets into space. Humans finally walked on the very same moon that Galileo had looked at through his simple glass tube. The story of the scientific revolution is not just about math or stars. It is a story about human courage. It is about a few men working in their dark rooms, looking through small tubes and fighting for the truth. They faced powerful enemies. They risked prison, blindness, and death. But they never stopped looking up. Their struggle reminds us that we must always ask questions. We must never be afraid to challenge the old ways. These incredible scientists left behind a priceless gift. They taught us that the human mind is powerful. When we observe carefully, when we test our ideas, and when we refuse to give up in the face of fear, we can uncover the deepest secrets of nature. True progress always starts with a brave question.